Welcome to Black in One Piece. I'm your host, Dr. Tasha, and you're tuned in to the Millennial Black Professor Media. Today on Black in One Piece, I'd like to welcome Dr. Kevin Harrison. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I would ask that you share with us what you do professionally and then anything you want us to know about you personally as we dive into this conversation.
Okay, awesome. So I work at Wichita State University in Cohen Honors College. I'm an assistant teaching professor, and then I also am the director for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What about me is interesting? I like to find honorable projects that I can attach myself to. I think as humans, we're obligated to take light to dark places. And I'm human, so I have that obligation as well. I try to find dark places and places where I can bring a light. And if I can be a benefit, I usually volunteer, sometimes even bogard myself into those spaces.
Yes. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Harrison. Last summer, we both were teaching as part of the Upward Bound Math Science program at WSU. So thank you again for being with us. One quick question I wanted to ask is, where do you consider home? What's your hometown?
I'm born and raised in Wichita. I lived in Atlanta for a little while. I lived in the Kansas City area for a little while, but I seem to always click my heels and find my way back to Kansas.
Okay. And one last kind of defrost question before we jump in. Who would you want to play you in your biopic?
Oh, wow. That's a deep question. Who would I want to play me in my biopic? I don't know. I'm going to probably say something corny like J Boog from B2K or something. I don't know. That one caught me off guard. I would have normally said like Malcolm Jamal Warner just because I grew up on the Cosby Show, and now he's plays a phenomenal role in The Resident, but we're like the same age, so I don't know if he could play me at a younger age. So let's go either Usher or J Boog.
Okay. I love Usher. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to jump into the nitty-gritty. How do you self-identify in terms of race and ethnicity?
I don't identify as African American, and in fact, I make sure that I don't identify as African American because Elon Musk is African American, technically, right? So I tend to identify as black. I don't have any problem with anyone who does identify as African American, but I identify as black personally.
Okay. And so I love that you said that because the next question is, how do you define blackness?
You know what? We could be here all day talking about that because there's just so many definitions of blackness. I have to look at it in terms of how blackness has been proximate in my life. And so I look at it as family. I come from a nuclear household, my mom and dad, one sibling. The black church is part of that experience as well. My neighborhood friends. I think if I had to summarize it all up, I would summarize it with the word love. There's a lot of love in every environment that I've been in. We talk about it takes a village, and my extended village includes all those places. It includes my home, both sets of grandparents, my church, my neighborhood friends. And I was raised by so many of my parents' friends who've instilled different things into me as well. It speaks, at least my life speaks, kind of a counter story to what the mainstream narrative of blackness is, that deficit-informed narrative that's often pushed down our throat. Don't get me wrong, these things exist. There is some criminality, there is some broken homes, but that is not the extent of blackness. Those are some byproducts that happen within black experiences. But blackness itself, I would say, is just a rich, loving, fulfilling environment, man, a supportive environment. If I was going to describe it, that's what it has meant for me.
I love that. And I'm right there with you. That's why we're having these conversations, because there's so much more to blackness than what we often see in mainstream media. So I define something called peak blackness as those moments when you're experiencing something, you witness something, and you're like, ugh, I love us. I love being black. So What is a moment like that for you? What's something you've experienced where you were saying to yourself, I love being black. I love us.
Peak blackness, man, so many moments. The Million Man March, I didn't go. I hate that I didn't go, but just the fact that it took place, I like that peak blackness. I felt that then. The Super Bowl, Beyonce's Super Bowl performance was just unapologetically black. I like unapologetically black, bold stances. And I think the reason for that is we live in a society that has always wanted to suppress our blackness. And it's beautiful, it's rich, it's powerful, but there have been so many attempts, systemic attempts, to suppress it. When I see people step out and say, no, this is who I am, and I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to tell these black stories, that's something that I embrace. So if you say peak blackness, I would say Million Man March, Beyonce's Super Bowl performance, anytime I watch, and I've watched both of these a million times, The Bullet or the Ballot, Malcolm X's speech, and I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King, or when I read the speech of What to the Slave is the 4th of July by Frederick Douglass, and I see these eloquent words being spoken by these men, especially with Frederick Douglass, because he's self-educated, previously enslaved. For him to have that type of command of the English language, that just speaks to the fact that we can do anything.
Yeah.
And so, peak blackness. Yeah, I like that.
And so I think I know the answer to this next one, but have you ever wanted to be anything other than black? Why or why not?
That is such an interesting question. I wouldn't say I wanted to be anything other than black, but the bold and unapologetic and pride with the blackness that I have today may not have always been there. Even though I come from a household where that was promoted. Yeah. You go to a black church and you see a picture of a white Jesus. You go to a white school and you have teachers telling you that you're not as good. And I'm a little bit older. I was born in 69, so 74 is when I started school. And constant racial attacks at public school right here in Wichita. When you audition for school musicals and you're told, well, you can't be in Annie. See, take a look at the picture of Annie at the Broadway play. There are no black characters in it. And when when those things are reinforced, you do, regardless of how strong you are, develop a little bit of inferiority. But I can tell you how mine got broke, if you'd like to hear that.
Yes.
My father broke that. We had a young man named Jeff. It was in the 4th grade. And I came home with a math test, and I had an 85. And I was proud of my little 85. And my dad was like, well, why didn't you get 100? I said, well, only one person got 100, and that was Jeff, but he's the smartest kid in the class. And my dad said, was Jeff black or white? I said, he's white. He said, well, you're the smartest kid in the class. And I was like, no, you don't understand, Dad, how smart Jeff is. And part of me thinking Jeff was smarter than me was because of that whole inferiority piece that I spoke of earlier. My dad just kept pushing back to the point where every time I took a math test, he would ask to see my math test, and then he would say, what did Jeff get? And after a while, I started beating Jeff. Yeah. Well, either we started both getting 100s. Now, this is when the multiplication tests were timed, so you got credit for getting them right and doing them quick. So my dad found that out. I don't know how he found out because I didn't tell him. So then he started wanting to know, okay, now you're getting 100 every time. Who's turning it in first, you or Jeff? So pretty soon, I started doing better than Jeff and turning it in quicker than Jeff because my father pushed me and encouraged me to see that don't let your skin color be a crutch. You're just as good, if not better, which he forced me to prove to myself that I was.
Wow. You talked about the white Jesus and then the messaging that you can't play certain roles depending on how you look. And it made me think about representation matters. My dissertation research focused on Black undergraduate women's experiences of colorism and hair discrimination at PWIs. So how would you describe your skin complexion and hair texture? And do you feel like they've played any role in how you see your blackness or how you've come into your blackness?
How I describe it now is completely different than how I probably would have described it 30 years ago. But I can proudly say black and nappy. That's my skin complexion and my hair texture. I've probably had more perms and curls and conks and finger waves than anyone you can imagine over the decades. But right now I'm comfortable saying black and nappy. How has it affected me? There's a Netflix series, and it's about Colin Kaepernick's life. He's adopted by these white parents that didn't know how to take care of his black hair. He was kind of almost in a sunken place, so to speak. I think I found myself in similar sunken places, working in corporate environments and having my hairstyles questioned by managers, supervisors was always uncomfortable. Sometimes you cut it to try to fit in, which I wouldn't recommend anyone listening to this podcast do. Other times you grow it out and pick it out big, which it doesn't grow like that anymore, and to be rebellious, and it's constantly going back and forth, trying to figure it out because there's some confusion there because those things are really attacks. They're subtle attacks. Yeah. Sometimes we think we don't live in an era where we see burning crosses and people promiscuously using the N-word, but there are a lot of little Southern jabs, and those hurt too. Yeah.
You mentioned the Black church. We talked about representation, your parents as some things that have shaped your Blackness. Are there any other things that you would say contributed to your idea of Blackness?
I think every day you wake up, something contributes to that. The way the world responds to you, there's something that I wish never went away, and it used to be that proverbial head nod between passing strangers that said so many things. It said hello. It said, man, keep your head up. It said, hey, I understand the struggle. I'm struggling too, but we're going to get through this. And it's almost like a secret code where you can communicate with a stranger without saying a word, which speaks to Blackness even generations before that, because there's secret codes within those Negro spirituals about escaping and things of that nature. One of the most profound and beautiful things about Blackness, which I think we're getting away from, so I hope we don't lose it, is our ability to communicate Black thoughts, Black ideas, Black spirituality, Black expressions without saying anything and without even knowing each other. We just have a way of communicating with certain head nods, handshakes, certain gestures, certain looks in the eyes. I don't see it as much anymore, and I would really be sad if we lose that. And I think that the social media is disconnecting us from some of those intuitive things.
For sure. I've seen conversations on social media about the lack of gatekeeping around those types of things. Do you think that plays any part as well? How it's just those aspects of our culture are just out there for anyone to partake in, and they do.
I hope you can edit this out. Our culture is the shit. It is. And so no matter how much people try to bash it, they eventually end up trying to embrace it and then monetize it.
Yeah.
I wish we could get in on the monetizing side of it in the beginning, because everyone wants to monetize our culture. But everyone wants to imitate our culture. But first, they want to bash it. And you can look historically at everything from country, which is ours, to all of the Beyonce haters. It's ours. She's just reclaiming what we created: rock and roll, blues, hip hop, so many things, even outside of music, open heart surgery, blood transfusion. I can go on and on. Things that we've innovated, even though we're constantly pushed into the margins of society, our innovations are embraced, monetized, and celebrated. I don't have a problem with other people enjoying our stuff. I just have a problem with them, A, not acknowledging where it comes from,
Right.
and B, one of the biggest pet peeves is having the audacity to tell us. How can someone that's not Black tell you about your Black experience? But there are so many experts on Blackness who are not Black, who are quick to tell a Black person what the Black experience is. Have you ever experienced that?
I have. It's frustrating.
Right, no doubt. So I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with some things, like this new promiscuity of the N-word and this new thing that these kids have, I guess, called the N-word pass, where a Black person can give a white person. No, there are no passes. You don't get to say it. No one should say it, but you don't get to say it at all.
Yeah.
You don't have the sweat equity to say it.
Okay.
Your ancestors didn't get the same mistreatment
Yeah.
with that word that my ancestors did, so you don't get to say it.
Yeah. There's been times where you've done different things with your hair, just shown up differently, I think, in your Blackness. How has your definition of Blackness changed over time, if at all?
I think it continues to change even now. As you mature, you learn yourself. And as you learn yourself, you become more bold about presenting who you are. And who I am is I'm unapologetically Black. And I think I'm a lot more bold in that stance as time goes on. There might have been times where I felt a certain way but shied away, whether it be in school as a elementary or middle school student, whether it be in a corporate environment, not wanting to rock the boat. Part of it comes with the whole confidence of knowing that you're not imagining these things. Because you know what grandma and mama went through, and you're not going through it. You want to say that these things are over, but they're not. They've just taken a cosmetic change.
Yep.
They just are cosmetically different. But you're sitting there weighing that out in your head at 16, at 20, at 30. Am I imagining this, or am I really being attacked? And I'm at 55. I know I'm not imagining it. I can boldly speak to those things.
How would you describe what being Black in this world means, what the experience is?
Being Black in this world is being resilient. It's being an overcomer. I'm going to go even one step further. I'm a patriot, and a lot of people who hear me say unapologetically Black say, well, that's not a patriotic statement. But I argue with that, because if you look at the framing documents of the country, you look at the Constitution, you look at the Declaration of Independence, those words are lies if it's not for Black people challenging those words to make them true. Yeah. Beautiful words, eloquent words, words that have stood the test of time, because this country's still here, and I believe it's the greatest country in the world. But without Black struggles and Black people, pushing the envelope, challenging those words to be made true. Those words are just hollow words on a piece of paper. Blackness and patriotism are synonymous. Yeah, I don't think you have true patriotism in this country without Black people challenging the injustices that make those documents false.
You said Blackness and patriotism are synonymous. Do you believe Blackness and Black culture are the same?
Blackness and Black culture. Let me see. I would say yes and no. Black culture is a byproduct of Blackness. But I would say Blackness is the mother and Black culture is the child. You don't have the blues if you don't have sharecropping. The blues is Black culture. Sharecropping is Blackness.
Wow.
You don't have Negro spirituals if you don't have slavery. The spirituals is the culture. You don't have poverty in inner city New York. You don't have hip hop. Hip hop is the culture. All of these innovations that Black people have given to the world, not just America, those innovations are the culture part. Yeah. In fact, I want you to think about this. Going back to my statement when I said Black culture is the ish, I don't think anybody would argue that Usher is a big star, a huge star, but I don't think anyone would argue that Taylor Swift is a bigger star than Usher.
Right.
Much bigger.
Yes.
However, if you go to 100 Taylor Swift fans, they can name you several Usher songs.
Absolutely.
Name me several Taylor Swift songs.
Cannot do it.
Exactly. Because our culture moves the entire culture. American culture is moved by our culture. When you think about everything that's relevant, it is rooted in our culture. Yeah. Everything that's relevant. Some would argue that statement, but I would take that argument 10 times out of 10 and I would win it.
How do you display your Blackness on a daily basis?
I don't think I have to do anything overt. It's the way that you carry yourself. It's what you believe in, the conversations you have. It's not backing away from difficult and courageous conversations. And at the same time, not forcing those conversations down the throats of people that don't want to hear them. The human experience is a beautiful thing. There's beautiful art in humanity, and the fact that people from different lifestyles can come together and share perspectives and both leave with something that they didn't have. But at the same time, you can't resurrect the brain dead. I don't think displaying Blackness on a day-to-day basis is pushing it down someone's throat that doesn't want to hear it. There's too many people that I can engage with that are going to be open-minded.
That leads us to our key question of the day. I had in my mind that every day we try to make it Black home, Black to the future, Black in one piece. Thinking about everything you've shared, what does Black in one piece mean to you?
Black in one piece, it's a pretty profound little statement there, Black in one piece. When you think about what Black people have been through in this country, about slavery, sharecropping, and the lynchings, current and historical, voter suppression, the judicial and the policing and the disparities in incarceration, and all of these different things that are really systemically designed to break us. That's what they're designed for. No different than during times of slavery where there was a whip that was designed to break you. These are all proverbial whips. The fact that we're still here and we're still thriving and we're still doing beautiful things, making beautiful art, having beautiful conversations, innovating in beautiful ways. Don't get me wrong, we don't always get it right. We have some problems. We have some violence and some gang activity and some other things as well, because after decades and decades of post-traumatic slave syndrome, decades and decades of the trauma that comes with racism, there's going to be some disconnect. But the fact that we're still here and we're still thriving, we're still doing amazing things, that in itself describes Black in one piece, right? Yeah, that describes that to me.
Wow. Well, I just want to thank you so much again for joining me today. This has been an amazing conversation. I especially enjoyed how Dr. Harrison broke down Blackness being the mother and Black culture being the child. I thought that was really powerful. Please tell us, where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
I need to be a little bit better about having websites and things like that. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. I'll do a little bit better because I have some things coming up that I want to share. So
y'all be sure to be on the lookout for Dr. Harrison's work, all the things that he's doing in the community. And until next time, stay Black in one piece.
Stay Black in one piece.